Well, welcome everybody. It's going to be just a few minutes as we allow people into the room. Folks are joining. So we'll just take the first minute or two, but we're really thrilled to have everybody here for today's Gateway Leadership Institute webinar, focused on virtual international student recruitment in the metaverse. Definitely been a hot topic lately. So again, we'll just give it another minute or so in this next, for this next moment while everybody's joining the webinar. Okay. Well, I still see folks coming in, but we will go ahead and get started here. Thank you again so much for being with us today. The Gateway Leadership Institute is thrilled to host and sponsor these Leadership Institute webinars. The spring 2022 instance of the Gateway Leadership Institute is actually our fourth instance. So we're really excited with the success we've had bringing great information to the broader community in international higher education, as well as for the participants in the Gateway Leadership Institute. We always like to at least thank and acknowledge our founding and managing director, Anthony Ogden. He's done a great job establishing the Gateway International Group. And again, we always like to take a moment and really thank and acknowledge his role in creating this space where we can bring this great information to you. Rosa, would you like to take a minute to thank our participating organizations?
Yes, hello everyone. We are very, very grateful to all our participating organizations, which are Apply Board, Apply Wave, Concourse, IDP Connect, INTED, and StudyMe. They are making possible this new edition of the Gateway Leadership Institute. And we are very thrilled that some of them are today with us. So you'll be hearing more from them.
Great.
And we are also having the support of two sponsoring organizations, which are SureLight and Verify Ed. Thank you also for the support to the Gateway Leadership Institute.
Facilitating today's webinar, of course, my name is George Kasenga. I'm an affiliate with Gateway International, but also the Assistant Vice President of University Partnerships with M Square Media. Thrilled to be here today and looking forward to today's session. Rosa?
Yes, and I'm Rosa Almoguera, and I'm the director of Edu Alamo, which is an international consulting organization based in Spain. I'm very thrilled to be here today and to be working with Gateway Leadership Institute. As I'm sure you will see, it's a great opportunity and venue. And we have G Choi with us today. G, would you like to present yourself?
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Chi Choi, and I am a Gateway intern for this spring, and I'm working closely with Dr. Kasenga and Almoguera with the Gateway Leadership Institute. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're thrilled to have GE as one of our interns. She's going to come back towards the end of the webinar with a special request and some exciting information. But we really want to dig into the heart of today's topic, which is about international student recruitment in the metaverse, and what does this term even mean, and what's it going to mean for us all moving forward. We have several really great industry and academic leaders to help us understand and guide us through this conversation. First, we're going to be hearing from David Bushy today, who's the Director of Partnerships in North America for a group called StudyMe. Next, we'll hear from David Weeks, who's the co-founder and Chief Operating Officer of Campus 360. And then third, we're going to hear from Dr. Craig Wilson, who's the Vice Provost of Online Distance and Continuing Education with the University of Arizona. So without further ado, we really want to get into the heart of today's conversation. I'm going to pass it off to David to start leading the conversation today. Please know that towards the end, we're going to have 10 to 15 minutes of open discussion and dialogue. So please take advantage of Zoom's Q&A feature if you have any questions. And also, please introduce yourself in the chat while the webinar is happening so we can get to understand our community that's participating today. So thank you, David. I'll pass it over to you.
Thanks, George, and thank you all for joining today. I'm really looking forward to this session. About 3 weeks ago, I was in the UK for the Pi Live event, and I have to say the conversation around the metaverse and the panel discussion on that seemed to be the hot topic amongst the entire 2 or 3 day event. So looking forward to this and looking forward to some of the questions that you all have after the session here. So just a quick introduction about myself. As George said, my name is David Bushy. I'm the Director of Partnerships at StudyMe. And StudyMe is an innovative new student recruitment platform flipping the traditional recruitment paradigm, or the way in which students and institutions connect. And I'll talk a little bit more about how we're doing that and the benefits as it relates to today's topic on international recruitment within the metaverse. So just kind of getting started here and really setting the scene, I guess I would say, for some of my co-presenters. I want to talk a little about virtual recruitment and how it's obviously changed over the past 2 years amongst the pandemic or amidst the pandemic. And really, the fact that virtual recruitment, I think we could all argue is here to stay. In many ways, virtual recruitment will continue to grow and hopefully grow for the better in ways to help to find and connect with the right students globally and be able to extend your team beyond just having to be on the ground, meeting with students face to face. And, look, there's lots of benefits to virtual recruitment, and there's lots of ways that virtual recruitment can help and support your efforts. However, if not done right, and given the proper attention, virtual recruitment can also be a really big challenge, and in many ways can alienate prospective students who don't feel as if you care or don't feel as if you're willing to spend the time to nurture them and help to answer their questions. And so before we jump into just specifically ways in which we can look at doing virtual recruitment in the metaverse, I want to kind of first look at who are the students that we're really talking about? Who are the students that we're trying to recruit? And in particular, I want to take a look at 2 parts of this infographic, actually to the right-hand side of the infographic. And one, just acknowledging the fact that the students that we're connecting with now are digital natives. And I know we've talked about this over and over again, so I don't mean to kind of reiterate things that we've already discussed, but they're digital natives in the sense that, they grew up with technology in their hand. And they also, the other piece of this infographic that I really like is that they really value human connections. It almost seems like it kind of contradicts itself in some ways, looking at this and going, right, well, they're digital natives, but they value human connections. Important to note that Gen Z students view human-to-human connection outside of just that you might do face-to-face. And so for many of them, they would consider their friend groups or human-to-human connection to be experiences that they have on social media or interactions that they might have with individuals through chat groups, friends that they've made on gaming platforms and teams that they formed. So important to note that there's those 2 really unique things with Gen Z is that, again, digital natives and valuing that kind of human-to-human connection. And for the purposes of my discussion here, I want to focus on that. And I want to focus on for virtual recruitment and whether it's in the metaverse or it extends into the metaverse, it's really important in terms of how we humanize that experience. Again, simply just taking emails and names on a sheet of paper and plugging them into our digital recruitment efforts, our virtual recruitment experience isn't just enough. We really need to find ways to be able to humanize and connect with those students. And obviously, as we discuss here today, David Weeks and Dr. Craig Wilson are going to talk about how that relates to the metaverse and in particular, some of the tools. I want to focus a little bit on a couple of different ways that you can humanize your approach in terms of virtual recruitment. And then I'll discuss quickly, I'll share with you how StudyMe is doing some of that, how we're attempting to kind of humanize the approach. So I think there's kind of 5 main ways that I want to focus on here for the purposes of today's session around how you can humanize your virtual or digital student recruitment experience. I think the first one comes down to considering the emotions that your students are experiencing, and all these should be incorporated into your plan and your strategy and communication efforts. Students are nervous. This is, likely the biggest decision and in many ways, probably the most expensive decision many students will ever make, and also for their parents. And so, helping to kind of nurture them along this process, not just from initially getting them to apply to your school or even deposit, but it goes beyond that in understanding the emotions that are built up in this. Do they get kind of buyer's remorse after they apply or after they deposit? And how can you continue along that process with specific, personalized, and humanized content in order to be able to make them feel like they've made the right choice? The second thing that I want to talk about in terms of humanizing your approach is injecting some kind of personality into your message. And I know that, for many of you, you've attempted to do this through, student ambassadors and, other different means in which you can really start to offer students, what is it really like to study on our campus? But I want to take it beyond that. I think the biggest opportunity for your school to humanize its brand is really to inject some personality into the organization and into the message that you share. And so, remember that you're building relationships with students and parents across a number of different touch points. And I think, including, again, your ambassadors, including social media takeovers, including, even just ways in order to be able to inject the personality of your recruiters into that experience is really, really important. Again, students value that human to human connection. They're not looking for just email communication. They're not looking for you to be perfect. They really want to understand what it's like, the types of students, the types of individuals they'll be meeting on campus. The third thing I want to talk about is just, how do we personalize that communication? I know this can be really tough, right? As we're thinking about connecting with thousands of students and thousands of applicants, tens of thousands of applicants in some particular situations. How can we make messages personalized? Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be the personalized message. Maybe it's perhaps the channel in which you're having that communication with students. Know that unique identifiers for many Gen Zers, they probably wouldn't consider to be their social security number. They'd probably call it their email address, right? Many of them knew their email address or know their email address better than their social security number or some sort of other unique identifier. So think about how you can make this message personalized to them. Think about how you can use, whether it's social media groups that they can be invited to talk about specific topics. Maybe it's around your follow-up communication or calls. Maybe it's that you've got student ambassadors actually doing some of that follow-up with them. Find ways to be able to nurture them, even after they apply and after they deposit, and find ways to be able to do so in a very personalized format. Next, I want to talk about, showing the human behind the brand. We talk about humanizing this kind of this virtual recruitment process and digital recruitment. That can be very, very difficult, right? Because in virtual and digital recruitment, we're sitting behind a computer. So think about ways that you can humanize that, whether it's through video content, whether it's through video chat, whether it's through, putting those individuals, your recruiters, other people that are chatting with students out on your webpage to be able to share their story, talk about, why they work at the school they work at, why they chose to study in the US if it would have been an international student. And try to ditch some of that kind of self-serving content that we have that are really kind of buttoned up case studies that we have on our website, and replace those with students just telling their story. Real content of students telling their story is what students are looking for, stuff that's authentic. And finally, I just want to summarize all this with customizing solutions for students. And this one can be a little bit more difficult, but I truly believe that every brand can be humanized. And it more so comes down to and relates to the delivery of how that brand or how that, how that brand kind of puts its information out there to students and less about the actual content or the product itself. And I think in this particular case, remember to make recommendations to students based on their needs. Try to just not put them into some sort of a cultivation loop or a cycle within your own CRM and sending them emails, but really try to think about how you can connect with them on a personal level. That might be supporting some of the digital or virtual recruitment efforts that you have, along with some in-person stuff. It might be doing so through sessions that they can join to chat with you. It might be through connecting them with individuals on campus, student ambassadors, but find ways in order to be able to really customize those solutions for students. And again, in all of this, remember that at the end of the day, for many, many students, they don't necessarily remember every little thing you said or you did, right? But what they remember is how you made them feel. And international students, in making the biggest investment, the biggest decision they've ever made in their life, want to feel like they're wanted and that you want them on the campus. And so think about how you can make international students feel good. At StudyMe, we're taking an approach similar to this, and we're focusing on really trying to humanize that student recruitment process for not only schools, but also for students as well. And so we are putting students at the center of that recruitment process and shifting away from a process in which students find universities and find university profiles they believe to be a fit. And on StudyMe, we're actually having universities find students. And so universities find students based on a student profile and their aspirations and needs in which they're looking for. And so on this particular platform, or on the StudyMe platform, schools are able to join. They find the right students and have the right conversations by using our 30+ different search filters. That could be by study level, it could be by program, it can be by budget, it could be by IELTS or TOEFL or English proficiency score. They shortlist students. They learn more about students through viewing their profile. And in this particular case, I can learn more about Mercy, where she's from, where she wants to study, what her study aspirations are, and what her career aspirations are, along with a number of other things. And I can really match or customize or personalize my approach with her based on the information and content that I know. And so what this means is that students and schools on the StudyMe platform are having a human-to-human connection through a personalized approach in which the university recruiter can counsel and recruit that student effectively based on their individual needs, and not necessarily categorizing them or thinking that they understand some of the challenges that student is facing. And so they can have a chat in our platform. When I talk about personalizing that content, you can see in the upper right-hand corner, the student chatting with this particular school would be able to see the person they're chatting with. They'd be able to know a little bit about them through the About section there in the bottom right-hand corner. And they could be having a chat with them to understand more about their particular school. Rather than just take it from me, though, I'm just going to show a 1-minute video showing what our students say about a personalized and humanized approach.
So when I started searching for programs, obviously the first thing, go on Google and I searched for postgraduate degrees around the world. Finding something that fits you is a challenge. And one of the first links for StudyMe, I think what I like the most, you get to speak directly to people who are representing the university and they are able to answer in-depth questions. Initially, I was speaking to universities from Perth, Adelaide, Melbourne, and then from the UK, the representatives of the universities are really friendly. The representative who spoke to me on StudyMe was able to convince me to join UB Bristol and study with them. Because of StudyMe, I'm here at UB Bristol, so thank you very much to StudyMe.
So as you can see with Shamad's example, it was really around that personalized approach. It was that attention to detail from the university, and it was really about making him feel welcome there to influence his decision. So thank you so much, and I'll pass it on to our other panelist, David Weeks.
I'll jump in
George.
Of course. So first off, thank you so much, David, because what I appreciate about, one, as an industry leader, being able to speak to what has virtual recruitment been, this humanized touch, really, really a valuable aspect of things. As our webinar progresses, we are going to be learning more about, what is the next generation aspect of this virtual recruitment and what is, what is the metaverse going to mean and all these other terminologies that are being thrown around. So thank you so much, David Bushy with StudyMe. We're going to come back. If anybody has questions for David or some of the ideas that he introduced, please use the Q&A feature. We'll also be monitoring the chat box, but the Q&A feature is the most convenient to make sure your question gets answered. But next, we're going to hear from David Weeks, who's with Campus 360. So thank you so much, David.
All right, hi everyone, and thanks to Gateway, George, Rosette, and everyone else who's made the webinar possible today. Hope you guys are doing all right. My name is David Weeks, and I'm with Campus 360. Campus 360 helps universities and organizations to leverage the power of XR. That's sort of a catch-all term for virtual and augmented reality, to better engage with prospective students using 3D and virtual worlds, different advertising tools that scaffold around that stuff. I personally have been involved with the creation of virtual campus tours for a couple of dozen universities. We've worked with about 250 universities in using some kind of AR, VR connection. I'm happy to say that Education USA and the US Commercial Service have also done virtual college fairs using some of our platforms in the past. So let's talk about the metaverse and what on earth it means. So I think that when we think of the metaverse, we probably think of Facebook rebranding as Meta. We probably think of people wearing some bulky head-mounted display like a virtual reality headset. Maybe this harkens back to the kind of shudders we felt in 2014 when we heard about Google Glass taking photos of everyone, and it seemed maybe a little creepy. There is certainly this sort of dystopian connotation surrounding the metaverse. Everyone probably remembers the novel Snow Crash and certainly the movie Ready Player One. And I think there's this very real concern that the metaverse can be utopian or it can be very dystopian. It can enable new levels and technologies of surveillance. It can afford a level of escapism from a world that's threatened by injustice and climate change. On the other hand, it's a much more complicated thing than that. When people talk about the metaverse as being Web 3.0, they're referring not only to those virtual reality headsets or a 3D meeting room that Mark Zuckerberg is trying to sell you on. In fact, it's actually a mix of an infrastructure, so 5G and Wi-Fi 6, the human interface, so mobile augmented reality through smartphones, VR headsets, AR headsets. It also includes the sort of the engines by which we can create experiences in the metaverse. So how do you build VR videos? It also includes an economy of creators and a real economy by which you can monetize things and ultimately make money by creating content or by hosting experiences in the metaverse. Then finally, we have the user experience. So it's a pretty complicated, multi-layered thing. Fundamentally, the metaverse refers to this universe of virtualized worlds. Now, I think that there's a couple of dozen working definitions of the metaverse out there right now, but we're talking about recruitment. So let's narrow in on what exactly we mean by the terms. For today's purposes, I'll refer to the metaverse to mean one of three things. First is just any virtual world where you are not simply observing this experience like a 2D video, but rather you're participating inside of it. So this could be a video game like Fortnite or a platform like Decentraland, but there's many others. This could also be an immersive piece of media or an advertising experience. So that could be a 3D image, a video, a game, a social tool, but one that's immersive in nature, but that doesn't necessarily require a VR headset. We can play Fortnite with a Nintendo Switch that doesn't require a head-mounted display. Next, when we talk about the metaverse, we also can be referring to experiences that do in fact require VR and AR headsets. So these three things, this idea of a virtual world or an immersive experience is, I think, what we're using or what we're referring to, even if some folks who are deep in the XR industry would probably disagree with the appropriation of the term. So there is, I think, as the other David referred to, there is certainly a generational dimension to this. Gen Z is particularly excited about the metaverse. I think case in point is that there are actually pretty famous music artists now who are doing concerts inside of the metaverse. Travis Scott made $20 million by doing a 12-minute concert inside of the game Fortnite. So they paused all of the shoot 'em up, sort of like normal dimensions of the game. It's a shooting game, and instead there was a Travis Scott concert on Fortnite, and that one concert was more lucrative for him than a Taylor Swift show in an entire city. Next is Pokemon Go. So if Fortnite kind of speaks to this virtual world, more of the VR sort of dimension of things, augmented reality is a bit different. Augmented reality involves the projection of digital media on top of our physical world. The example that everyone's probably most familiar with is probably Pokemon Go, where the Pokemon is projected through your phone on top of some the physical environment you're already in. Pokemon Go made $900 million in 2019 and got 1 billion downloads. So, most of these were from very young people. So Gen Z is pretty excited about XR and about the metaverse. Now, I think that when we watch Ready Player One and we think about a virtual campus tour, it seems like there's a lot of conceptual, it seems like we have a long way to go. So I'd say that we can think about the metaverse technologies and recruitment in a couple of ways. So the first is what's here now, what's commonplace, what's cutting edge, what's near future, and what's far future. So I'd say commonplace would be virtual campus tours, as well as social media filters like Snapchat filters. Those actually use augmented reality. Cutting edge stuff would be 2D brochures, things like business cards or marketing mailers that actually have 3D holographic projections that come up on top of them. This could also include holographic displays that you can actually plug into a portable power bank and display some 3D holographic media at a college fair that can capture, sort of turn people's heads and act as sort of eye candy, as well as information sessions done inside of virtual campus tours. Then you have more near and far future things where VR experiences and campaigns take place native to VR, as well as course content actually being delivered inside of VR, ultimately sort of eroding this barrier between the digital and physical worlds. So let's talk about four main XR tools that work today for recruitment. So the first and probably the most fundamental is virtual campus tours. So this is really relevant for international students because if you live in China, coming to the US to tour a college right now is really hard because the plane ticket might cost about $3,000. And when you come back to China, you have a 3-week mandatory hotel quarantine. It's not really possible for a lot of students in China and many other important sending markets to tour US colleges. It's also true that travel costs do inflict it as, that does make it very difficult for students from out of state or students who maybe don't have the resources to travel to campus to be able to experience what it's like to be there. So I'd say that cutting edge VR tours right now, or virtual campus tours, don't require an app download, and they're designed to be platform agnostic. So they work on mobile devices, desktops, and tablets. Smarter VR tours, though, or virtual campus tours, have immersive video and not just 2D still images. And they have this ability to guide someone through the campus tour rather than just posting it on your admissions website and hoping someone uses it. So actually walking people through what they're seeing, giving them context on the different statues and different stories, the department buildings that they're actually walking through. So it's not just contextless pictures. And finally, as Oculus has sold 10 million Quest 2 headsets and sales continue to go up. So as consumer adoption of VR headsets goes up, being backwards compatible with VR headsets so that when we get past that sort of tipping point of consumer adoption, you're better positioned to take advantage of the new technology. So I think that probably the biggest thing that I'll highlight here on virtual campus tours is we probably think of the digital student, a virtual student recruitment event as being some version of what we're doing right now. So a Zoominar, right? It's screen share, maybe it's video share. Now, that's fundamentally a passive experience. I'm playing you a video. It ultimately gets bottlenecked by the bandwidth capabilities of Zoom, as well as both of our internet connections. And I can't look around in a video that you're showing me. So, I sit and I listen. On the other hand, at a virtual campus tour, you can actually, and particularly with Campus 360s, but there are others that I think can do this as well, that allow you to present information inside of the virtual tour so that a user can look around, click on different things that are of interest to them, even walk to a different location inside of the virtual tour. And then once the virtual tour is, once your speaker is ready to move on to another location, you can kind of gather people together and move them on to the next location. So I think this is a pretty exciting way. And I think this really does feel like metaversal, right? It's a virtual world. And you're able to kind of do this kind of familiar activity of talking about particular locations on campus, giving them context on what they're looking at, but having some kind of new technological innovation baked into it. Next is augmented reality. So we think of AR as being something associated with Google Glass, but in fact, each one of your smartphones has augmented reality functionalities. And there's reason to expect that as LiDAR gets baked into more cell phone cameras, the technical capabilities are going to get better to be able to deliver AR experiences through smartphones. Now, we probably use mobile AR without realizing it right now. if you've ever used a Snapchat filter or an Instagram filter, then you have used mobile augmented reality. This guy is not wearing these sunglasses. That is a piece of digital media that's been projected on top of his face. But there are interesting ways to do this in a recruitment context, either to present more information and make that call to action. So go to this website, fill out this form, do this thing, cut down the amount of keystrokes and make it faster and easier for a user to do that, or to be kind of fun and memorable by showing someone an animated model of a mascot or something that's a little bit more playful and memorable. So at Campus 360, one of our favorite examples of this is a 3D holographic business card, where you've got a traditional business card on the front side with your contact info. On the back side is this QR code that has this launcher that will, regardless of what kind of device you have, it opens up this 3D holographic menu with clickable links that allows you to go to a website, a social media page, or to book an appointment with an admissions counselor, all with one tap. So you don't have to worry about people misspelling your email address or ultimately not doing the thing you want them to do. The next thing, which is a bit more playful, would be doing this in the context of 2D marketing brochures. So we have a persistent problem where mailers get put in the recycling bin. So how do we keep the mailers out of the recycling bin and actually encourage students to use them? Well, you can use mobile AR to bake in portals that show people particular scenes on campus through this simple piece of paper. Or you can actually project a 3D model that pops out of the brochure and do some kind of dance or wave at someone or go to sleep or what have you. And you can also, you can even have a representative from campus using a specialized camera film a sort of greeting message so that person sort of physically pops out of the brochure. The final, I think, really interesting innovation with mobile AR is self-guided campus tours. So it's probably true that for some visitors of your campus, they come at weird times. They might come on President's Day and your office might be closed, or they might come during the summer and students might not be on campus to give them a tour. So what do you do for these people? This is especially acute in big city campuses. So so essentially what we've done is we've created what we call an AR self-guided campus tour, where you can hold your phone up and it will show information about what you're looking at in front of you. So if you're looking at a statue, you'll have these pop-up bubbles of information, giving you a bit more context on the history of a particular statue or some kind of story that matters for what you're looking at. But there's another problem that you have with self-guided tours, which is that a lot of buildings are locked. You can't just have people walk into dorms or libraries. So there's security issues like that. But with mobile AR, you can actually embed a portal into your AR self-guided campus tour where someone steps through this projected little window and it allows them to enter a room virtually and see what's inside of it. So that's a way that you can kind of keep your key carded spaces locked while still giving people a sense of what lies inside. The last two things, which are much faster, is holographic displays. So if you've been presenting at a college fair, there's a lot of students, there's a lot of desks. How do you get people to stop by and talk to you? Well, one kind of fun level of eye candy are these tabletop holographic monitors that display 3D holograms. They're pretty eye-catching. So this is, I think this is, you probably can't display a huge depth of information through this, but you can display a mascot doing a cute dance or something that just gets someone to stop by to have a deeper and more meaningful conversation. Finally, yield events are kind of tough to do in a digital format because there's not that element of spontaneous discovery, and it's really hard to simulate peer-to-peer interactions. Fundamentally, Zoominars are really, one person speaks, the others listen. You inevitably end up monopolizing conversations. So the loudest and most vocal students are the ones who talk, and the majority of people are silent and just listen. But using virtual rooms or VR yield events, you can actually allow people to get close to each other, and that automatically starts up a video chat window or allows their digital avatars to talk to each other. And it's easier to facilitate peer-to-peer interaction or even staging sort of team building activities like playing a virtual game together. So I'd say that's one other level on which the metaverse can be useful for recruitment, not just to get top of funnel leads, but to get people to accept an offer of admission. So with that said, I'll turn the floor over to George for transition. Thanks, everyone. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to chat with you afterwards.
Great. Thank you so much, David. Both of our Davids presented really compelling and interesting information about, again, virtual, and now introducing kind of this metaverse component of virtual recruitment. As industry leaders, we really value that you could join us today and talk about what is happening out there, because we're all looking, coming out of this pandemic period and whatever it's going to become next, everybody's looking for that competitive edge, but also what are the students generationally, what are people looking for when they want to engage with one of our universities? So if people do have questions, please direct them to the Q&A feature. We're going to transition next to our final panelist before we then go into a broader Q&A discussion. And I know I have questions. I see people chatting, what is LiDAR? What is this? So get ready, everybody, our panelists, because you're going to have questions. But next, we're going to be hearing from Dr. Craig Wilson, who's with the University of Arizona, who's going to speak to us a little bit about the metaverse and what this looks like from the university perspective, not just how do we engage our potential students to attract them to our institutions, but what are they going to be looking for at our institutions that represents engagement in a metaverse that is a very forward-looking next generation approach to higher education. So Dr. Wilson, may I hand it over to you?
Sure, yes. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to share my screen really quick here and sort of get started. Excuse me. What I wanted to do, I normally start off with a quote, and this one's from Mahatma Gandhi: "Our ability to reach unity in diversity will be the beauty and test of our civilization." And whenever I think about international students, whether it's recruitment, engagement, or otherwise, I always look at it from a more holistic lens, because it certainly adds value to all of the students, not just our international students coming to the US, but to our US students who have the opportunity to interact with our international students. So with that being said, I wanted to sort of touch a little bit on the origin story. David alluded to it earlier with Snow Crash. Interestingly enough, this marks 2022, marks the 30th anniversary of the first time the word metaverse was actually coined, and it was by Neil Stephenson. And what's interesting is that in that 30-year time block, not much has changed in terms of what we expect from this metaverse. It's a computer-generated universe, as you can see here. And the users are using three-dimensional images via goggles, and they hear stereo digital sound. And what's interesting is that was 1992. Here we are in 2022, and pretty much all of the equipment you just saw still remains basically the same. What's also interesting is the fact that over that course of time, over that arc of time, our ability to sort of understand how would we use this in our everyday trappings, as not just industry, but also on a university setting, has been really, really compelling. So what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about setting the stage about what metaverse, how it's defined, whether it's in the dictionary or whether it's Wikipedia. Again, it's this other environment that relies heavily upon our ability to socialize, as well as our yearn as humans for social connection. In terms of the growth of the metaverse, as you can see here, it seems like everybody and your brother and sister are getting into this space. And most recently, you see Microsoft, top right-hand corner, just acquired Activision Blizzard for just about almost $69 billion, all in an effort to be big movers and shakers in this world that we're calling the metaverse. Disney, if you've taken your kids to Disney, or grandkids or friends or what have you, everyone lines up to see Mickey Mouse or Minnie and what have you, but not everyone gets the opportunity, unfortunately, because that's a top tier star. So what happens? Well, little Susie, Jim, or whomever doesn't get an opportunity to say hello, and their actual experience is somewhat diminished. But in a metaverse, what Disney is thinking about doing is making that available to anyone who steps into the metaverse to be able to spend time with Mickey or with Minnie or Pluto or whomever. So that there you can see some of the value. Again, it's social connection. As mentioned earlier, Facebook did rename itself late last year to Meta. And they are pumping in tens of billions of dollars to outfit this new existence, that being the metaverse. And of course, Apple, typically in Apple fashion, they won't be first to the party, but their strategy has time and time again to be best at whatever they're doing, whether it's smartphones or tablets or all parts in between. Now, what you're looking at here is a framework. Now, it's still being worked on. I'm still sort of teasing out some of the finer parts, but in essence, I'm looking at the next 80 years of what our higher education system might look like when the metaverse is finally introduced, and how might it have an impact on the things that we're doing on a day-to-day basis. So I start off in phase one, the launch, and I start off with looking at a couple of different things. I look at enrollment equilibrium. I look at blockchain being mainstreamed, curriculum being reimagined, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then I heard someone say earlier about Ready Player One. We're looking at Ready Student One. And how does all of this impact that student and that student's experience? Then I move on to phase two, the challenge, phase three, refine, and ultimately phase four, destiny. And under phase four, this is going to be interesting, and I know it's going to sound a bit absurd, but like Einstein said, only those who attempt the absurd can achieve the impossible. That being said, at some point in time, there will be interplanetary education. If we continue to move in the way that we're going, whether it's SpaceX or otherwise, when we do actually inhabit the International Space Station on a more layperson's standpoint, or whether it's the moon or what have you, there will be opportunities for these types of environments to not only live in an earthly existence, but also an extraterrestrial existence. So that being said, what I want to do is I want to spend a little bit of time on the next spot here, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. Also, what the new phrasing I'm sure you're all well aware of is GLI, social justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And that sort of plays really well into the metaverse space. And with respect to that, the metaversity ultimately. At some point, students, when they're coming in from different countries and other parts around the world, at some point we have to ask ourselves, in this metaverse, we've talked a lot about the technology that's going to undergird it, but I want to approach it from a human side. When we start to really look at students who are in these spaces, questions come up about social norms, mores, and those sorts of things. Are there going to be borders in a metaverse? Are there going to be country borders? I mean, if you really think about it, if a metaverse is a digital existence, where our digital twins are going to act and live, the question has to be, well, if a person can traverse anywhere and be transported at any time in the metaverse, then why would there be borders? And if there are no borders, then what would be the norm? What would be socially accepted? And what's socially accepted currently as our world is constructed, what might be socially accepted in one part of the world may not be socially accepted in the other part of the world. And in a metaverse, if there are no borders, then how do you make those types of big, weighty statements? I mean, think about this example. You're driving, you get to an intersection, you see a green light, it's your green light, you get to the intersection, you just drive right on through because the green light is yours. But that's because we follow a rule of law, which says that when you get to that intersection, you can continue past with relative safety, or at least the expectation that you have relative safety. But if we don't have a common body of understanding, when you got to that intersection, you'd have to stop, even if the light was green in your direction so you could go through, because there was no expectation that the other traffic would stop and obey their red light. So these are the types of things I recognize that this is a rudimentary example, but it's an example that hits home because these are the things we go through every day and we take for granted. So if there is a social challenge, we need to be thinking about what would that challenge look like when we're all on the same platform. Now you're hearing in fits and starts that, well, there's going to be multi-metaverses that are going to tie in and so on and so forth. And this Web 3.0 will be a mega platform and you just sort of bolt on to that. Well, that may be so, but there's still going to be on-ramps and there's still going to be common areas where our students, as well as the rest of our humans on the earth, are going to find themselves having commerce, having conversations, and interacting. So these are the types of things that continue to drive the conversation. From an ethical standpoint, we need to start figuring out how is that going to live and how is that going to be a part of the tech. The tech is, if you think about it, at your institutions right now, when someone says, oh, we're going to implement this new technology, we're going to try this in the classroom, we're going to try that in the process. The tech is usually the easiest part. It's the human side of understanding how that tech's going to really operate. How is it going to live with my workflow? How's it going to live with my ability to get things done? That's usually the hardest part of adopting the tech. So while we're making these major leaps, and as I was listening to Dave Squared, I was really excited about both of their presentations of how the technology would be implemented on both of their platforms. But for me, I always think about, okay, so how does the human side come into play? You know, and that to me is the real impact, either positive or negative, of how this is going to be a part of our future. So with that being said, I want to move on just a bit. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to watch a show called The Alter Ego. It was on Fox for a period of time. David talked a little bit about the Travis Scott concert in Fortnite, and I wholeheartedly agree with him. He made $20 million for a very short amount of time, but it was also, from what I understand, it was the largest concert in human history because over 12 million people showed up. And that's only possible when you have a platform or background like a metaverse, where you can in fact have so many people interacting. And if you had an opportunity, if you haven't seen it, go to YouTube, type in Travis Scott, type in Fortnite concert, and you'll see it's about a 15-minute video or whatever. Take a look at it and you'll see how the interaction was. It was kind of but it was like all things. It starts off with a little meh, but over time it gets better and more refined. And with this alter ego slide that you're looking at now, in this particular case, you might have seen like American Idol or all of these shows, and I forget the last one, the one where they have their backs to the audience, they have their backs to the singer.
The Voice.
And The Voice, thank you, The Voice. So, and then that's when you get a chance to see, does the face match the voice? Does the image in your mind match the voice? Well, alter ego takes it a step further. And the persons who are performing, you see the young lady here with the sensor suit on, she's behind curtains and the judges never see her. All they see is the avatar, that which she projects. And throughout her audition, she's actually using the avatar as what's being seen on stage. And the judges are making their determinations based on that. Imagine, if you will, our international students or our students who might not have had an opportunity to understand or appreciate what international students go through, to have an avatar as that international student. And then no one knows that you are not the international student because they see you as that international student. And then think about how you might be treated. Think about how you might be either respected or disrespected. Think about all of those things that we might take for granted as the host country, and how from an empathetic standpoint, you actually have an opportunity to see what is it like to be that nationality? What is it like to be a female? What is it like to be from any other underrepresented group? The metaverse does hold some promise in terms of helping us understand better, I think, what some of our folks who are not like us might be going through, and have a better appreciation in terms of informing policy, informing process, and certainly broadening opportunity. So I bring this up because as we look at this alter ego TV show, it's the harbinger of things to come. And if you read Rolling Stone magazine, you'll see that now there are new record companies that are looking at hiring nothing but the avatar and having these avatars have full careers. So, you know, it might seem something that's really kind of conceptual and not really ready for prime time. But as mentioned earlier with the Fortnite and the Travis Scott $20 million concert, the real money is being exchanged because people recognize that this is happening. You heard earlier about the digital land, you know, whether it's Upland or other places, people are actually buying digital land to build digital homes because all of your avatars are going to need digital clothing and they're going to need digital accessories. And these things are happening. So,
so
just
Dr.
things to think about. Sure.
I want to say, so being mindful of time, we have a number of questions that are coming in and you are speaking to some of them already. Is this a good point to jump in with some of the Q&A, or
Sure,
I'm not sure?
sure.
Okay,
Sure.
Beautiful. Because what you're saying and what all of our panelists have expressed is so compelling, and it's relevant for international recruitment, but it's also relevant about what are these students going to be desiring and looking for moving forward. So I'm going to coordinate or pass off to Rosa to help coordinate some of the Q&A coming up, because the questions that you were just talking about, Dr. Wilson, speak to some of the questions our participants are asking about. Rosa, may I transition to you?
Thank you, George. Yes,
Thank
let's
you,
start.
Dr. Wilson.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson, too. So we'll start with a question that we had from Thaddeus Blay, and we can direct it to David Bushy. He says, are we using Gen Z as a universal phenomenon? Does it get differentiated and nuanced when we're dealing with international students, many of whom have been impacted by the digital divide on a global scale? So David, if you want to address this first question.
Yeah, I mean, I think, sorry, I'm just trying to get back to the question here. I think, yeah, I mean, look, in some ways, there's obviously is a digital divide on a global scale, and by simply lumping all Gen Zers into one basket and saying that they're all digital natives and that all of them are engaging in human-to-human connections digitally, I mean, would certainly be generalizing it. But I think in many ways, you know, connecting with students and the future in which we connect with students will be more and more digitally engaged, you know, whether that's through, you know, social media or through iPhones or through, you know, any different form of digital recruitment. And a lot of that comes down to simply just access, right? You know, and access to be able to get places and access to having bandwidth and staff and people to be able to travel. And so, yeah, I mean, in some ways, you know, we are looking at, you know, there is a digital divide, but I think generally speaking, you know, most Gen Z students would certainly be those that are digital natives and be seeking out ways to communicate and engage digitally, as opposed to doing everything face to face.
Well, thank you so much, David. And let's go to the other David, and let me ask you, David, how can I make the case to my leadership that augmented reality or holographic marketing materials, or even an upgrade of our virtual tour is worth the investment?
Sure. So I think that first, the difficulty of attending in-person recruitment events in some of the most important sending territories in the world does beg the question, okay, what else are we doing? Second, I'd say that I don't want to offend anyone here, but I think that it's a safe statement to say that universities aren't exactly, don't always necessarily lead the charge with implementing new technologies. There is sometimes an implementation lag to bring things to an admissions office or to the classroom. And there's, I think, an imbued sort of conservatism in, in institutions not wanting to take the sort of, leap into the deep end. However, mobile augmented reality has been used by advertisers in the retail context for a number of years now. I mean, if you go to IKEA, you can sort of, you can project what it's like to have a couch in your living room. And that's a function they've had since, I think, 2018. Amazon has this. If you think about just the sheer variety of e-commerce retailers that have been using this for several years now quite successfully, I think that kind of makes the case that this isn't sort of stepping into the unknown. This is a needed technological upgrade for a virtual tour. And a lot of the AR marketing stuff, I think that you can look at a number of successful use cases in other commercial contexts. To make the case that we're not crazy and doing this for the first time. This has been battle tested, and the numbers I think pretty consistently demonstrate that if you have a mobile AR activation in an advertising experience, that drives up your click-through rate by as much as 60%. It improves brand memory, so whether or not someone remembers the experience of seeing one of your advertisements by another 40%. So I think the numbers are there. It's not new technology. I think it's just new to higher ed marketing.
Well, thank you so much, David. And let's move on to a question for Dr. Craig Wilson. So how do you see international students interacting in a metaversity?
Yeah, so that's interesting. I think it's all going to depend on just how inclusive the metaversity it really is going to be. I think in the beginning, it's going to be bumpy. I think a lot of the same trappings we were experiencing now remain intact, but over time, it'll be a lot more refined. And that's why, I think the first 20 years, I call it the launch phase, that's going to be the hardest because you're still dealing with legacy, not just technologies, but legacy ways of legacy viewpoints. I think just like Star Trek was really something that was forward-looking, where we saw women on the same equal footing, we saw different races and even different life forms from other planets all having equal footing on that same USS Enterprise. I think that same thing is going to have to be what we're striving toward. So it all really depends. And I'm responding to another person's question about does the metaverse advance educational access and equity, or will it perpetuate educational inequities? And it depends. It depends on who's at the table as the metaverse is being architected. So, the algorithms are everything, and algorithms that are not designed with underrepresented groups in mind, that are not designed with our international students and our international all of our international friends, if they're not a part of the algorithm, then they become marginalized. And that's why, as we're constructing this, we need to make sure that at this seminal point in our history, in our human existence, we need to make sure we get this right, or those things will be perpetuated in the digital space.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. And now with this, we're sorry, we are now at the end of our webinar, and let us remind a kind reminder of our next webinar, which will be about emerging ROI solutions for international enrollment managers. And with that, let me ask G to remind us of a very special feature that she wants to share with us today.
Thank you, Rosa, and thank you for all of our panelists who have joined us and shared a great their expertise on Metaverse. I have put the link to the survey in the chat box. This is a survey that we want to conduct to see and to identify the leaders in international education enrollment. So if you can take 5 minutes after this webinar and fill out the survey for us, we would greatly appreciate it. And the infographics from this survey will be posted in the final publication of International Enrollment Management, the Gateway Leadership Institute, at the end of this spring. Thank you.
Thank you so much, GE. And thank you, everyone, all of our panelists and everyone who attended today. The final recording of the webinar will be posted to the Gateway International Group YouTube page, so you can revisit all of these compelling ideas there. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.